Today, I'll be looking at why most popular retirement calculators are giving you misleading information about your retirement readiness. As the partner of a retirement planning firm, I've discovered that the standard online calculators consistently overlook critical factors that could impact your retirement timeline. That's exactly why I'm making this video today, to show you what they miss and what you actually need to make accurate projections. So if you've ever searched for retirement planning tools online, you've likely come across a free retirement calculator from some major financial institution like Fidelity, Vanguard, or Schwab. These tools are everywhere, promising to give you a quick and easy answer to the all-important question, will I have enough money to retire? The appeal is obvious. With just a few inputs, your age, your savings balance, expected contributions, sometimes Social Security, and a target retirement age, you get a projection that looks scientific, precise, and reliable. It's a comforting number, often displayed in green if you're on track for retirement or red if you're not, and it makes planning feel simple. And because these free calculators are published by household name financial firms, they can sometimes carry an element of authority. People trust them. And why wouldn't they? If a major institution tells you that you're 85% funded for retirement, it must be accurate, right? Unfortunately, that's where the problem starts. Although these calculators may be convenient for getting a pulse on your situation, they can easily create a false sense of security or an unnecessary sense of panic. And that's because they rely on just a few of the many moving parts that encompass real-life retirement planning, and then automatically assume the rest based on very broad formulas that would be impossible to apply accurately to every user. That's exactly what we're going to unpack in the next section. The biggest problem with most free retirement calculators isn't just that they oversimplify things, it's that they can create a false sense of confidence or concern, and that can cost you years of your financial life. I'm not talking about minor miscalculations. I'm talking about major mistakes that can send you back to work in your 70s or keep you grinding away at a job you could have left years earlier. Either way, the cost is measured in years, not dollars. Let me prove it to you. I took a deep dive into some of the more popular free retirement calculators, the ones that are offered online for free by Fidelity, T. Rowe Price, and Charles Schwab. And I did so to see how they actually determine retirement readiness for the users of the tool. So using the same set of assumptions, a 58-year-old couple with $1.5 million saved, adding $50,000 a year, a household income of $250,000 before retirement, and a moderate investment allocation. I compared the results to my own projections. Here's what I found. One calculator gave them a retirement score of 80, flashing bright yellow like a B-, which I thought sounded pretty good. And another said they had a 77% chance of success, also not terrible. But then a third one projected a $1 million shortfall, which is a completely different story. And in my own analysis, they only had a 27% probability of fully maintaining their lifestyle without having to reduce their spending or make any other adjustments. That's not a rounding error. That's a fundamental gap in how these calculators work. To see just how much this discrepancy could cost someone in real life, I tested how much longer they'd need to work to get each calculator to say that they were safe. The result, a 2 to 5 year difference, with the simple calculators tending to tell the user that they could retire sooner than they probably should. Now think about that. If you follow the wrong calculator's advice, you might retire too early and run out of money. Or you might spend an extra 5 years working when you didn't have to. Either way, that's years of your life that you can't get back. Next, we'll break down why these miscalculations happen and what you actually need to account for when planning for yourself. Standard retirement calculators create what I call the simplification gap, where financially prepared pre-retirees continue working unnecessarily because their trusted planning tools tell them that they're not ready, or alternatively, they retire while unknowingly accepting the very real risk that they could deplete their savings during their lifetime. The clean interface, seemingly precise outputs, and authoritative branding can make these calculators compelling. But beneath the surface, they're often riddled with systematic flaws that can easily distort most users' perception of their retirement readiness. The problem isn't that these tools occasionally make small errors. It's that their underlying algorithms are built on a flawed process that makes certain assumptions broadly for all of the users. This isn't just a bug. It's a feature of how these tools are designed. It's like prescribing the same meal plan to every person, regardless of their metabolism or dietary needs. The plan might work for some, but for most, it's either too much, too little, or completely misaligned with what they actually need. This leads to two major problems. First, many pre-retirees delay retirement unnecessarily, losing out on valuable years of freedom because their calculator tells them that they're falling short. Second, those who rely too heavily on these tools may assume that they're safe when they aren't, only realizing their miscalculation years into retirement when adjustments become far more difficult. So what are these flaws that create this simplification gap that I mentioned? There are 4 key errors that I found these calculators make. And in the next section, I'll break down each one and show you exactly what you need to do instead. So the deeper that you look into standard retirement calculators and their disclosed methodology, the clearer it becomes that their shortcomings aren't random. They follow a pattern. Across nearly every major platform, these tools rely on some variation of similar flaws that can create misleading retirement projections. And while there are many areas where they fall short, there are 4 fundamental errors built directly into their algorithms that systematically distort retirement readiness for their users. And these aren't just minor miscalculations or rounding errors. They're structural flaws that affect millions of users because they're embedded in the very logic these tools use to generate results. In the next section, I'll break down each one of these flaws in detail. We'll look at exactly how they work, why they persist, and what you need to do differently to get an accurate picture of your own retirement. So the first major flaw, taxes. 2 of the 3 calculators that I analyzed completely ignore them. They operate on a pre-tax basis, meaning they determine your retirement needs before factoring in what you'll actually take home after taxes. This might seem like a minor detail, but in reality, it can lead to huge miscalculations that throw off your entire retirement plan. Here's why that matters. Your actual cash flow in retirement depends on how your money is spread across different types of accounts when you take Social Security and how your investments are allocated. Some people will pay significantly less in taxes by strategically pulling from different accounts, while others will owe much more. A calculator that ignores this can be wildly misleading. The second major flaw is how these calculators handle planning for couples. 2 of the 3 calculators that I analyzed were shockingly vague when it came to retirement planning for 2 people. One of them at least allowed the user to manually input their own assumptions for things like Social Security. So if you knew what you were doing, you could lump both spouses' benefits together, but the other, it just assumed that you were planning for one person, meaning that it ignored one spouse's Social Security entirely. That's not just a small oversight, it's a massive mistake. When you introduce a spouse into retirement planning, everything becomes more complicated. You're dealing with 2 incomes and different career earnings histories, spousal Social Security benefits and coordination of timing, different life expectancies. One spouse may need income for years after the other passes, potential health challenges that can impact spending needs differently for each person. And yet these calculators don't account for any of that, and people rely on them every day to make life-changing decisions. The third major flaw, how these calculators handle investment returns. Now, to be fair, I did appreciate that all of the calculators I analyzed emphasized below average return assumptions rather than assuming that everything would go perfectly, but I still found 2 major flaws that can seriously distort the outcome. The first investment flaw was that they oversimplified withdrawal rate assumptions. One calculator assumed a bad market until retirement, which is a reasonable stress test, but then it calculated the available portfolio income using a standard 4% withdrawal rate. That's a problem. The 4% rule is sometimes treated as the universal rule of thumb, but in reality, it's not one size fits all. There are many variables that impact a safe withdrawal rate, and it's not the same for everyone. By applying a rigid 4% rule, the calculator oversimplifies one of the most important factors in retirement planning, which can lead to either oversaving and working longer than necessary or undersaving and running out of money too soon. The second major issue is that only one calculator factored in sequence of returns risk, and that's a big deal. Sequence risk is the risk of experiencing poor market returns early in retirement when you're withdrawing from your portfolio. If you retire right before an economic recession, it's likely that your money won't last as long. And that's because you're withdrawing from a shrinking portfolio, locking in losses and reducing the amount left to recover when markets improve. Your withdrawal rate automatically increases because your portfolio is worth less, which puts even more pressure on your assets. It limits the magic of compounding since you're spending down assets before they've had a chance to rebound. Most people assume that if the market averages 6 to 7% returns over time, then they're fine. But that assumes steady returns, which isn't how markets work. If you get bad returns early on, it can set your portfolio on a downward spiral that's hard to recover from. And yet 2 of the 3 calculators ignored this risk. The consequences? In either case, the result is a wildly inaccurate assessment of how much money someone actually needs for retirement. Depending on the calculator, you might be told you need far less or far more than reality with no real understanding of the risks involved. And when you're making decisions that determine whether or not you can stop working, that's not a risk worth taking. And finally, the 4th major flaw, spending assumptions. You probably heard me say this before, but this is the crux of retirement planning. Your spending dictates everything: how much stress you'll put in your portfolio, how long your money might last, and ultimately whether or not you can retire when you want to. If your spending assumption is wrong, then your entire retirement projection is wrong. And yet, 2 of the 3 calculators initially calculated spending for the user, and 1 didn't even allow the user to input their own spending assumptions. So how did they calculate the spending estimate? By using broad, generic assumptions based on survey data, national statistics, simple percentages of pre-retirement income. The problem, I've worked with hundreds of retirees, and I can say with certainty, everyone is different. Yes, averages exist, but an average is just that, it's an average. And when it comes to something as critical as spending, relying on an arbitrary formula instead of a thoughtful and tailored process can be a huge mistake. It actually took me a while to figure out how to make sure each calculator was actually assuming the same thing because their spending calculations were so buried in their logic. And that's the point. Most people using these tools don't even realize that the numbers they're getting are sometimes built on broad estimates that may have nothing to do with their actual lifestyle. I cannot overstate this. Your spending assumption determines everything. From how much you need to save, to how long your money might last, to whether or not your plan will work in the real world. And if a calculator oversimplifies it, or worse, makes the decision for you, the entire retirement projection can become meaningless. Now, if you're worried about where you stand for retirement and want to know what your number actually looks like, click the first link in the description, complete the 2-minute retirement questionnaire on my website, and within a few days, I'll personally provide you with a video walking you through my thoughts about where you stand. Now back to the video. The problem with these 4 flaws, ignoring taxes, oversimplifying couples planning, misjudging investment returns, and faulty spending assumptions, isn't just that they exist, but how they compound and distort retirement projections. These aren't small, isolated errors. They can interact in ways that can dramatically mislead retirees. For example, if a calculator assumes that you're withdrawing $10,000 more per year than is necessary due to incorrect tax assumptions, the mistake isn't just $60,000 over 6 years. It could snowball to hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost growth potential over a few decades. Each miscalculation amplifies the others. Underestimating taxes means you think you have more money than you do. Overly simplistic spending estimates can throw off projections. Ignoring market risks can lead to unsafe withdrawal rates. And if a tool doesn't properly account for couples planning, it may drastically misjudge your long-term cash flow. When combined, these errors can create a false sense of security or undue fear, leading people to either work longer than necessary or retire too soon and risk running out of money during their lifetime. So what's the takeaway of all this? Retirement planning can't rely on generic one-size-fits-all calculators. The flaws aren't just minor inconveniences, they're fundamental distortions that could mean the difference between a safe retirement and running out of money too soon. So where do we go from here? The good news is that once you understand these distortions, you can plan around them. And that's exactly what I'll break down next. A smarter, more systematic approach to retirement planning that minimizes these risks and puts you in control of your financial future. The fundamental shift that transforms retirement planning accuracy is moving from static assumptions to dynamic modeling. Standard calculators are designed around one single goal: creating a simplified projection based on average assumptions that anybody can use. While this appears convenient, it can create a significant problem. It reduces the complex, dynamic nature of retirement finances to oversimplified averages that systematically misjudge real-world outcomes. Now that we've broken down why standard retirement calculators fall short, let's talk about what actually works. Retirement planning isn't just about plugging numbers into a formula. It's about understanding the bigger picture. A one-size-fits-all approach doesn't cut it because your financial situation is unique and real life is messy. Markets fluctuate, tax laws change, and personal spending patterns evolve. The key to an accurate retirement plan is moving away from rigid, oversimplified projections and using a dynamic, flexible approach that can adjust with you over time. One of the biggest gaps in traditional calculators is that they may ignore taxes. Many of them assume a pre-tax world, meaning they calculate your retirement income needs without factoring in how much of your money that you'll actually get to keep. In reality, when and how you withdraw your funds from different types of accounts, traditional IRAs, Roth accounts, taxable investments, can significantly impact how long your savings actually last. A proper plan accounts for tax efficiency, looking at strategies like Roth conversions or strategically timing withdrawals to minimize taxes and maximize what's left in your pocket. Another major flaw that these calculators often make is that they oversimplify investment returns. They assume a smooth, average rate of growth when in reality, short-term market moves are often unpredictable. What really matters is when you experience good or bad returns, especially in the early years of retirement. A steep market downturn just as you start withdrawing your money can have a lasting impact on your portfolio, a risk that most free calculators completely ignore. A more reliable approach doesn't just assume a steady, say 6% return, it stress tests your plan against different market conditions to see how it holds up in real-world scenarios. Spending is another area where these tools fall short. Many calculators assume a fixed percentage of your pre-retirement income, but retirement spending is far more personal than that. Some people travel more in their early years, while others may need to plan for increased healthcare costs down the line. A solid retirement plan considers not just how much you'll spend, but how those expenses might change and evolve over time. And if you're married, most calculators don't properly account for couples. They either lump everything together or ignore important details like the timing of your Social Security and your spousal benefits, the impact of one spouse outliving the other, or how to coordinate your withdrawals across multiple accounts. A good plan takes both spouses into account and maps out a strategy that works for the long term. At the end of the day, retirement isn't about hitting a magic number. It's about having the confidence that your money will last. That confidence doesn't come from a free online calculator. It comes from understanding your full financial picture and making smart, informed decisions every step of the way. So if you want to understand how to better use these tactics for your plan, click the first link in the description, where once you submit a few details on my website, you'll get a personalized retirement review from myself that gets you closer to answering the question, how much do I need to retire? I'll see you in the next one.